at the end of 23, so just a few months ago, in the throes of trying to run a church and manage a family and wrap up a dissertation, while also coming down with some sort of sinus pressure, I started to notice that there was extra sound going on in my head, more than just my normal thoughts. And it was real mild, but then as I have a naturally anxious disposition, that anxiety latched into that, and it provoked my health anxiety, which then made the whole situation in my head just feel so bad. And it was really almost, the sound that I have is very much like a screen being on. So really, if I'm calm about it, almost blends into the background about just about anything. But at this point in time, it was brand new to my inner hearing, and I stressed out about it. It took me about 3 weeks, maybe a little bit less, but just about 2.5 weeks before I was once again on Instagram looking for tinnitus accounts. And that's when I stumbled across MindEar. Now, in the course of the 2.5 weeks, I'd stumbled across a lot of tinnitus information out there that was hocus pocus. Maybe that's being kind. But this account just seemed a little bit different, and I jumped on and I started listening to the YouTube and the podcast links. That led me to realize that, okay, I'm dealing with people who know what they're talking about. They have the degrees, they have the experience, they have the research, they have the journal articles. And I really appreciate it. I spent one day while I was working on my dissertation, getting ready to wrap it up, and I just spent the whole background in noise was just MindEar people. And that was really helpful immediately when I started listening. And then I got the MindEar app, the free version. I started realizing I'm not alone. And I think that in itself made me realize, sort of soothed this anxiety that had originally surged, that it's not me, I'm not dirty or bad or, did something wrong. It's just, this happens to a lot of people from various walks of life. And I think it just helped to have some tools to refocus my thinking. Now, I am someone who is open to mindfulness and meditation and yoga and prayer and all that. So the techniques that were being offered through the MindEar app with TINNITUS and through the podcast that I was listening to really resonated with some practices that I was already. I immediately jumped onto that. And within weeks, I would even say, I think when I met with you, I think it had only been about a week or week and a half, and I'd already started experiencing real, I'm hesitant to say control, because tinnitus has a mind of its own, or at least mine does. But I started to feel that I was spending less time thinking about it and focusing on it, and more time enjoying my beautiful Colorado surroundings, enjoying my children, enjoying it. But that previous initial 2.5, 3 weeks I was so preoccupied with it, just constantly nervous and anxious and eager to get rid of it. And with the tools that I was given, I was able to sort of say, okay, now there's a very likely chance that I may have this for the rest of my life. And I want that to be a good, long life, not one that's, obsessed with thinking about this hissing sound that goes on. So that's sort of how I found myself here and in conversation with MindEar and Michael and all that other stuff. Confess that I have health anxiety, and I'm open about that as much as possible so other people know that they're not alone. When this started happening, it did not take more than a couple of hours for my health anxiety to really surge. And I went onto the Google and I Googled. And of course, I stumbled across, in the rare cases, it might, be something really bad. And so I latched onto that, and that just spiked everything and started getting louder. My anxiety surged, panicking. I would say very much close to panicking. Frantic would be the adjective I would describe about my research behavior. Now I'm an academic, so I research stuff and then I write on stuff, right? But this This time it was more about frantic researching, trying desperately to get rid of it. I wanted to eliminate it, and just and being afraid. And so fear and frantic behavior would be how I would describe it. Now, I had some interesting things going on because it was connected to a sinus thing. I noticed that when my sinus pressure eliminated, so one of my occupation is that I'm a priest and I had to preach Christmas Eve. Now, I always get a little bit nervous no matter how long I've had this job before I preach in front of a crowd. And so I noticed that right as I was walking up, the sinus pressure, because those endorphins, sinus pressure released, and then the tinnitus went away. And so it was this weird moment where I had total clarity, and that was grateful. I was grateful for that. And within a few hours after the service and everything calmed down, it did end up coming back. And since then, I've kind of had this on again, off again, complicated relationship with my tinnitus. So really, I would say that the first 2.5 weeks were riddled with fear and anxiety and senses of doom. What if this is my life? Like, this is what I'm going to have to think about and contend with from here on out. So it was, now I'm used to being someone I'm not afraid of the dark or dark thoughts or human darkness in general. But this was pretty disturbing because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to just ignore it, like the ENT would say, or other people online. Like, you just have to learn to live with it and ignore it. And I was like, someone with health anxiety, that's nearly impossible. So how can I proactively get there? So I'm lucky, 2.5 weeks. That's not a real long time in the grand scope of adult life. But it was a long 2.5 weeks. And I was grateful for having other things to do to kind of maybe take my mind off of it, but it was always there in the background. And so I struggled a lot within the 2.5 weeks. If anyone is listening to this and they're in that situation, they're in that 2.5 weeks, I would say, don't Google. Stop your Googling. It's not going to be helpful, and you'll find yourself down some really dark rabbit holes. I would say get the MindEar app as fast as possible, and also start engaging with the tasks. Now, on the free version, you get a certain amount of tasks, and those were helpful. In fact, when I got to my limit, I would go back and find ones that reminded me. There's a little video that is a rocker. I would almost classify this little cartoon image as like a 20-something who's sort of a rocker and gets tinnitus. And I listen to that just 3 or 4 times at various points when my anxiety would be really high, and just to remember, oh no, wait, your life does go on, and not only just goes on as is, it goes on and it can get better, and you don't have to be afraid of this sound. It's a sound that your brain is, your nervous system, your anxiety centers, they're all trying to help you and protect you, and realizing not to fight it. So I would really recommend those tasks and revisiting them, because humans are as brilliant and as wonderful as we are in our own creation. Man, we are slow on the uptake. And we will forget good news as fast as it comes and cling to the bad news. And so when that anxiety surges, don't wrestle with it. Don't fight it or try to ignore it. Go and find a counter narrative. And that's what I found that MindEar app does, is it gives you another way to think about it that you in your own mind aren't thinking about it. And that's a really powerful impact, because we're dead set on our negative narratives. And so sometimes just being reminded, okay, this little cartoon also had it. I'll be okay too. I've made mistakes, right? Like in a frantic moment with dealing with it, like within the first week, I had done the thing where I purchased the product and that was guaranteed to eliminate it. I ended up not taking it. I did end up getting most of my money back. But the number one thing is that with chronic illness, or chronic pain or chronic discomfort, which is where I would sort of classify, put tinnitus in that group. Anyone who's promising you a quick fix is a charlatan, because there isn't a quick fix, not with chronic issues. So that's something that I had to learn the hard way. Now, I haven't necessarily shared that information, but I'm not embarrassed by it, because I was frantic, I was desperate, and the videos capitalized on that, and they played into manipulating that fear, and they know what they're doing. That promise of instant relief is really it's tempting and toxic. So I would say that to just be aware that there's a lot of there's lots of falsifying to get you to spend your money in places. Now, there were also some real radical accounts on Instagram that I encountered, and knowing what I know now, behavioral therapy, mindfulness, meditation, good sleep, healthy diet, I realized that some people come up with a program and then they want you to pay a lot of money to invest in the program. But the reality is that they're not calling a thing what it is, because you can get the same benefits for free by doing these other things, by eliminating that stressful component, by dealing with the anxiety, rather than, going on an all meat-based diet or drinking things to eliminate the parasites that are living inside you. Like, there's a bunch of stuff out there, or avoiding vaccines, or, maybe it's your phone that's giving you tinnitus, right? If you dig just below the surface on some of these claims, then you can actually see that what MindEar is offering at a very accessible, it's in your phone, for a very accessible and a very accessible way. You get to the same amount of relief, rather than investing a bunch of capital that you may need for other purposes. So,
Yeah.
so those are two ways that I began to navigate it. And information is powerful. Being enlightened makes you able to see through certain smoke and mirrors. Again, my tinnitus is best, I describe it best as sort of like that, old computer screen kind of being on in the background. And I would say that if you had asked me at the time, I probably would have rated it like 7 or 8. Looking back, I'm like, nah, that's under a 5 type of tinnitus. Where I am now is that I have so many hours in a day, and even days, where I'm not thinking about it. It doesn't impact me. So I would have to almost drop it to like a 1 or a 2. Now, I'm connected to the barometric pressure up here in the mountains, and the clouds have rolled in, and my ears are a little bit more clogged, and so the tinnitus goes up. But I would say that it never, ever gets above like a 3 or a 4 for me. And when it does, when it threatens to do so, I tend to anthropomorphize my tinnitus like it's my little buddy who's being a little obnoxious. But when it threatens to get worse, I have tools that I can immediately start employing. And the tools that I've gotten from the Tinnibot conversations, and also the tools that I've gotten from dealing with just my general disposition towards anxiety and health anxiety, and acknowledging it and talking to it and being like, I see you, I hear you, and you're not real. There's no threat. There's no danger. So I'm able to really kind of put a grip on the anxiety, because that's kind of the key. If I'm listening to Tinnibot well enough, then I know that it's the anxious response and how I engage with the sound that really matters. So now, I mean, it's real. I feel very fortunate that it's real manageable. And, like, I don't hear it all the time, or not even necessarily all day, So it's gotten a lot better. I'll share with what kind of helped for me was you're not alone. And as someone who believes in communicating good news, you didn't do anything to deserve this. This isn't condemnation. This isn't divine punishment. This isn't a reason to have shame. And it's just a thing. It's a part of bodies. Human bodies break down. This is a meditation I've done on the Calm app for dealing with chronic pain, but bodies hurt and get sick. That's what they do, is one of the mantras that I picked up on, and that's what this is. It is something that has occurred, and it's a natural thing, and many people suffer with it. And whatever you're experiencing now, with the right tool in hand, your experiencing tinnitus will and can become way more manageable. This isn't a life sentence. You're not in some sort of auditory incarceration. Life goes on. When I got my hearing test done, I told my audiologist about it. I've told my husband about it. He's had tinnitus for about 4 years. Anyone that I know now, if they ever share it with me, I'm more than happy to say, get this app. I think it's the most solid thing that I encountered. I feel so fortunate to have encountered it early in my journey, because the tools that it will give you out, and the soundscapes are great. There's one that has birds in the background, and I've eliminated all the other sounds. I've gotten all the birds, and I'll put the birds in my earbuds, and I'll listen to birds while I work, and there's nothing wrong about that. So I highly recommend it. It just is it's a partner on this journey, learning to deal with it. And so I highly recommend it. Don't think that you can do it alone, because that's a mythology. Human beings can't do much alone. So we need help, and here's help.